Ready? Ready? All righty. Welcome, everybody. I would like to call the regular Moab City Council meeting to order on February 13th, 2024 at 6:01 p.m. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Howard, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Howard. We're going to start our meeting today with a workshop. Corey is going to join us by Zoom, right, Michael?
Yes.
And looks like he's coming in right now. Hi, Corey. He's going to give us an update on code compliance. If you remember at our strategic plan, we were going to talk about this and decided to wait and do it in a public meeting. So he's just going to talk about the priorities, what the code compliance department's been working on over the last year, and any questions that you guys might have about that. Okay, Corey, you're on.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Alrighty, so just in a bit of that recap, coming off our strategic planning sessions from this past January, right near the tail end of some of our reporting, we lost the opportunity to maybe dive in a little bit deeper with you on this. And then in addition to that, as far as what is this compliance update, was the request for staff to provide a little bit of background and data into this past year is what we have currently been identifying or working through our general process for compliance. So a little bit of data to inform how we're moving forward and just the way the structure of our outreach and emphasis programs are designed. So we'll dive into a little bit of background still. Is with our case generation framework, we essentially have three generation areas where cases are based. So one of them being a complaint-based system being typically generated out of a citizen originated submittal or call, typically online or coordinated through our compliance office. The second being code enforcement. This generation is typically out in the field with our code enforcement agents, breaking down into categories that are a little bit more like flagrant health and safety welfare concerns, or more apparent violations to that specific degree, or within some of these outreach or emphasis-based program areas. So it isn't that they're out necessarily at full view emphasis, but being given direction from the code itself and these programs that we're talking about. And then the third, which is a little bit of a mixture of both, is our staff and agency-based cases. So this is typically a jurisdictional based case and is a little bit more technical in nature. It's not typically what we'll see out of this area is not typical for these health and safety concerns. Most of the time, they're a little bit more statutory obligations and regulatory triggers. But we obviously compound anything that's apparent like that in addition to our outreach and emphasis programs. And to explain a little bit more about code compliance of what it is that this team and the construction of that team is doing is deriving its direction from the council through its adoption of ordinance and code. So it is exactly that, code compliance. So we've taken our Moab Municipal Code and those provisions that have been adopted and directed to us through council through those different regulatory areas, and then carrying out those requirements, and as businesses and residential areas develop, make sure those are all in compliance in that way. So enforcement compliance, that's why we often hear those two terms as they go hand in hand. While we're looking at these, before we dive into some of the data, it might help to break down a few of what we mean by these group areas, what we're trying to see. So that idea of kind of more of a flagrant health or safety welfare concern could be something like building without a permit. It's something that could immediately endanger either the people that are conducting the work, or those folks that are around it, or are going to be using that structure or infrastructure. Another might be interference or encroachment into accessibility areas, accessibility standards. And this doesn't always come in the form of structure. That's why those are typically placed apart. But if there's, say, a lot of material that's being placed in the right of way that could interfere with the storm drainage, that could offset and actually interfere with the way some of our storm drainage might be and end up flooding areas it's not supposed to. So even though it's not what we consider like a big raving red flag of something important, it does have a trickle down effect of that health or welfare component. Another one might be nuisance. Nuisance is kind of a vaguer term. We have a title section of our municipal code that's dedicated to describing that, but it can really come in the form in that we're talking about here from a complaint-based system in odors, noise, things that are generating on a particular site that are outside of an appropriate level for that zone or for the particular use. And then we talk about outreach or emphasis-based programs. Things we might see to that nature are typically less of a what we'll call it that flagrant priority extent. It's something that obviously we need to be moving the progression of compliance forward, but it's something that we're working into the system naturally with development. So these are things that will work with the community and our businesses to come into greater compliance on a longer timeline. Something like that might be commercial sign campaigns. I think most of the council is probably familiar with some of the sign code updates that we passed a couple of years ago, and how elements of temporary signs might be utilized by commercial businesses, but isn't exactly something that's jumping off the page. So our enforcement team, while it's maybe not a complaint base where a citizen driving down the road is going to recognize that's not been constructed or approved, our enforcement team can help take those along a little bit further. Another one is, for example, like food trucks. As they're coming and going and they have regulatory provisions and statutes coming from the state, that's something that we work with the whole commercial community of saying, okay, we're exercising an audit review, just make sure where we're at with those types of things. And another outreach or emphasis area could be, example, like short-term rentals. That might be a good emphasis area to highlight from the council in years past, prioritizing that aspect of our codes being pursued to the fullest. And then something near into the staff and agency area, it's a little bit more vague, is kind of our statute obligation and regulatory triggers. Something like that is really, it's a back office end. So it is something that we have to pursue, but mostly from a good example is like grease trap violations. That's not something that's kind of apparent out into the public, but it's important that we are processing those things. Another might be conducting business without a license. It tips over into maybe health and safety a little bit in that arena, but more or less is us ensuring that the system and compliance of the city is moving forward. So understanding that basis, we can maybe move into the data piece here a little bit. So into that first category of complaint-based review. So this is coming back from our 2003, this previous year's reporting system. Mona Pompili with Co-Compliance was able to provide all of the data into those breakdowns, so we can kind of see what in a number quality rose to the highest ranked number of complaints, just to give us a perspective. So obviously there's far more than is what's shown here, but this is kind of what's rising to the top is the most numerous coming up. So within complaints, we have weeds, short-term rentals, nuisance, camping, and building without a permit. Within weeds, and I'm not going to go into each of these in too much detail, but weeds is a good example of this, of where there's multiple areas of violation within that one context. So that might be the kind of leading violation case is a weed abatement case or something like that. But the technical terms of that, it could be anything from a fire hazard to an odor or maintaining a nuisance as far as odor or rodent control, something like that. And tumbling into another couple areas of regulatory, like landscaping, for instance, not qualified as unmaintained landscaping, something like that. So there are varieties of terms even within these categories. But short-term rentals are pretty obvious. Camping is maybe another example to just take a pause. Camping, we typically think of maybe somebody from out of town showing up and just kind of parking their campsite on the side of the road or in a residential neighbor somewhere. So yes, that is one of the components of camping, but another is what technically files under is maybe on-site employee housing that isn't in an approved dwelling. It might be a tent all the way up to a parked RV with hookups. So under a technical term, it is camping, but it's a very different process in how to approach the compliance from that perspective. Moving forward into code enforcement, these case reviews is obviously weeds, and weeds being what might be more or less a rhythmic number of cases, in that the wet year that we had last year produced this kind of abnormal amount of growth within the community. So we obviously found that to be one of the higher issue cases throughout town, but may not be the same case moving forward this year, and that maybe there is something else that maybe takes its place as kind of the voluminous time consuming element. But weeds for code enforcement. Food trucks is another example of one of our outreach capacities and emphasis areas. Signs, again, outreach, and then nuisance and camping, as some of these could be in the little bit more flagrant health and safety issues. And then staff agency and case review, like I had mentioned, grease traps is one of our premier cases in this particular file. Business license is required, meaning they're operating without a license or without a complete license or some element of that. And then what can kind of be into the emphasis areas of camping, short-term rentals, and then building without a permit. So that's coming out of this last year in the different categories of compliance there. And then into 2024, what it is that we're framing our structure around based on the code that's been approved and how we're going to be moving in with our outreach and emphasis areas. So with our approval of Moab Outdoor Lighting Ordinance, obviously lighting is going to be one of our bigger emphasis areas of approaching that. And again, on that longer term, we're all very familiar with the different tools that we baked into that ordinance. So there'll be many different scales of how we're approaching that and how quickly those will advance. Landscaping to the same degree. This is far less of an immediate, what we'll call maybe complaint or level 1 punch, like we said with lighting, where there's kind of some immediate violation implications. With landscaping, it's much more into the legal non-conforming field, so it's going to be handled through development, much more standard. And then camping, short-term rentals, nuisances, and signs are kind of our pre-baked emphasis areas that are standing. So while that was hopefully not too much information, that's kind of the broader reach of where we're heading. Thank you for giving me the time to go through that. I know at strategic planning, there's so much you're having to work through and go through. This is one element that we were really happy to share, and thank you for giving us the time to do that. At this time, I'll turn it back over to maybe Michael or Carly if they have any other follow-ups, or the mayor if we have a discussion.
Questions for Corey or Michael? Colin, you look like you're thinking.
Yeah. Processing.
Okay,
I have one.
sure.
Corey, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about some of the stuff you guys are going to do or have done in terms of outreach and engagement. I know that the chief has provided us some flow charts and that kind of thing, but I'm wondering what outreach looks like for you guys.
Specific to just this general code compliance process or a particular item?
Both.
Okay. From the broader process sense, it's something that we'll typically categorize on a year calendar, and we try to do month by month. We end up bundling. That is to say, maybe 2 or 3 areas within a month, and we build that up over a couple months to actually execute, which is, for example, maybe take signs, for instance, is that we're going to identify, okay, we're going to engage into our sign campaign is how we might phrase that. And with that comes with essentially email mailers, handouts, in-city audits, utilizing our code enforcement to ensure that what is the bigger base of the compliance is where it needs to be. And oftentimes with development, there are a lot of moving pieces all the time. So signs coming up before maybe their business license is cleared, all those types of elements. That helps us maybe not get into complete compliance in this moment, but it helps us identify where we need to go or who we need to contact into getting the city kind of an annual term into better compliance. And food trucks is maybe another good example of that, where food trucks are coming and going all the time, changing businesses. Some are year round, some continue to evolve. So it's really great for what we hope is going to be great is that we have a reliable resource for them every year that we're coming back saying, here's how we can get you into greater compliance if there's things that we're not meeting within the code. And also that's kind of a good pulse check for us as well, that if within the community there are elements of a use that are continuing to kind of chafe or fringe against what the regulations might be, it helps us take a better microscopic view on that to say maybe our code is due for some updates to better accommodate what is the trending use. And I see Michael's come up, might have a follow-up come up there.
Not really a follow-up. I just want to add to that, Corey. Great explanation. But this year is a unique year because we're launching into our zoning title review. And so there'll be a lot of work that we're doing on the zoning title, which means those are all legislative changes. Anything that we do to the title is legislative, which means the city council will have a lot of involvement. So when we come to these ordinances, and the reason why I got up was food trucks. Food trucks is one of those things where we're going to look at it. It's an evolving form that came out in the last 20 years. And over the last 2 decades, it has been evolving. So we'll be looking at that. So the council will have an opportunity to get really into the potential legislative issues, which will guide code enforcement going forward. Now, as far as outreach goes, the people who are involved with these will be notified of meetings that we will have, opportunities to give comment. We will have public meetings. We will have outreach related to the entire title, but also related to specific topics as well. So we're hoping to get as much feedback as we can. So lots and lots of outreach coming up this year, not so much related to specific violations, but the potential for legislation that will affect how we enforce codes or how we interact with the public going forward.
I'm just kind of curious, do you find that people who are out of compliance with code, it's because they don't know? Or is there people who are just doing things because they're trying to get around it?
Well, Corey can answer specifically for the city of Moab. I could tell you my thoughts.
And once they're brought up to like, hey, you're out of compliance, are most people like, okay, and they get on it, and or you're like hounding people continually,
Yeah.
you give them like the 30 days and then you happen to repeat it after 30 days.
So my experience, then Corey can talk about the specifics here in Moab, but my experience is that people, if you believe that people are generally people are good, that most people want to follow the rules, and not everybody knows about them. No, but if I wasn't a city planner, I guarantee I wouldn't be reading the zoning ordinances. But so to that point, most people that I've dealt with in my career have wanted to come in compliance once they are informed. And we're here to help them to move towards compliance. And that's what Corey's group, everybody who works in that group is working towards. They have a matrix that they go through or a flow chart that they go through. And the goal is always compliance, to get people to understand what the codes are and then bring them into compliance. When things get escalated up to me or Carly, we generally spend a lot of time talking to people about, or even with these guys, it's not exclusive to us, but we end up spending a lot of time talking to them about the codes and why they're important. And it's not always clear to everybody how something that they're dealing with specifically on their property could be a bigger issue. It's not just them. It's not just focused on them. It's a bigger global issue that could result in health safety implications, all kinds of different things. But Corey, did you have any comments on specific to Moab?
Really quick, I think one thing that you've pointed out, which I think encompasses the biggest aspect of compliance, is it's education. That is the number one thing we do, is education. Now, to Jason's question, what form that education is received in Moab is kind of, it's dynamic. I think for all of the categories of which you said, people that want to come right into compliance. Oh, I didn't know that. I actually just had a recent engagement with a property owner. It's like, I thought I knew, man, this is a bummer. It cost me money, but I get it. I should have done it. And then move forward. It was really, it was nice to have that type of engagement. And then there's the other two, which are people that are maybe kicking and screaming, but eventually get there. And then there are folks that that kind of just have a objection to governance or regulatory authority. And I think we pride ourselves in Moab of having all of these types of folks in the eclectic community that we do. So it's when I'm thinking about those categories, it's almost in equal sorts. A third, a third, a third. But that's with our compliance team. I think we're dynamic enough that we know how to approach these different folks with their different perspectives.
Nice.
And I really appreciate from Chief Bell's presentation, I said that there are many opportunities in the process for people to come into compliance. And so it really does seem like a system that's set up to work with people and avoid the punitive measures. So I appreciate that.
And I just want to clarify something. I mentioned escalations. The reality is there's not many escalations. Almost everything, save just a few, are handled through this process that was presented to you previously with Corey and the police department and code compliance and code enforcement.
Are there situations where people are unable to come into compliance because of like financial reasons? And in those circumstances, like what do we do?
So as a policy, I think we have to look at what the issue is. And if it's a health and safety issue, we really don't have a lot of leeway on that. We need to bring people into compliance right away. And so we'll work with everybody based on their individual circumstances. But if we're working towards compliance, if it's not an immediate health and safety issue, we can work with people on a timeline that works for them as well. We don't want to be a nuisance to neighbors and things like that, but the reality is sometimes it takes a while to come into compliance. And if we're working with somebody and we can see them taking steps and we can outline a process for them, we'll continue to work with them.
Anything else from council for Michael or Corey? Thank you guys so much. Appreciate everything
Corey.
that you
Thanks,
do.
Michael.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Corey. All right. Moving on. Next up, we have public comments. We have two folks that are here to make comments. If anybody else is interested, I need you to fill out a form. You have 3 minutes and we'll start with you, Nick.
I wanted to talk briefly about what's going on at the Old City Park in relation to the pond there. Most of you, I think, are familiar with it. And you recently probably received a carbon copy of the letter that I did on that. You should have. Looking back at the 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the design and opportunities and capital improvement section under Old City Park and specifically under the pond, there's a brief statement that says duck pond fencing is not attractive or park-like, and pond could be redesigned to allow perimeter access to the water without the need for fencing. And that's the whole crux of the issue. If it was strictly a duck pond that had a few domestic ducks and it was a shallow pond that wasn't an issue, that would be great and it'd be a nice addition to the area in that form, but that's not the case. As you're all pretty much aware, I think it's a deep pond. It's an important pond, particularly for wood ducks who are rare to this area, but who thrive in that particular location, even though it is in the middle of a park. And in addition, now the pond itself is home to round-tailed chubs who are being reared in an attempt to salvage things for the Colorado River without having to go to a endangered species declaration route on that. It's my understanding that there are grant funds in the mill right now toward doing something there, and that the key thinking amongst staff is that it would be done with a simple rail fence around there, removal of the existing fence. Our concern is that rather than doing that, it really should be done as maintaining a 6 to 7 foot fence. I think something could be done that would be much more aesthetic than the fence that's there. There's no quibble with the fact that that fence isn't in the best condition, isn't the most attractive. But with the proper design, and if money was available, I think it could be done with a fence that was capable of providing predator elimination from the water, would keep children out of a dangerous situation with deep water there. It would eliminate a potential liability hazard to the city that way. And if it could be done with some solid panels built into it with view holes through the panels, it could provide a place where people could stop, view the wildlife that was there without disturbance to the wildlife. And it would be a perfect opportunity to come back and install some educational materials that could benefit both the community and in many different ways from that. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate your comments. And for council, if you did not receive the email from Bree, we are working closely with DWR. We know how important this pond is and the wildlife are. And so Bree's working closely with them to make sure we do it the right way. Appreciate your input, Nick. All right, Howard. This is going to be a challenge.
Honorable Mayor, honorable councillors of Moab City, thank you for the privilege and time to present myself. I actually have been serving Moab City as a volunteer for many years. And I'd like to highlight two ladies who were so dedicated to Moab City's fiscal success, often goes unspoken, and that was Marion DeLay and Elaine Gisler. And I had the privilege of serving on the Travel Council for 9 years, making sure Moab City was vibrant. Since 2020, the county has made decisions that are directly impacting your coffers. They have decisions made that suspended the marketing campaign, and the chickens have come home to roost. I just received the occupancy numbers for 2023, month by month. Every month was below 2022, considerably. That means there's less people. But more importantly, the tax revenues that you're collecting at the county, the transient room tax and the tourism taxes, those taxes are designed to make sure you're vibrant, that the hotels that Moab City approved through due process are full as much as possible. Not one month last year was over 60%. August was 30%, and December was 18%. That means we have more vacancies than that. And as a taxpayer, I see that there's a value to spending, and especially at Moab City. And I'd like to thank Moab City for being an exceptional city in an exceptional state, as we're #1 in the country right now, it's my belief. We're letting the state down by not making sure these hotels are full. And I say that because I'm a restaurateur, and I depend on these people seeking their personal happiness, if you will, to come here, enjoy nature, however they personally choose, stay in the hotels, and maybe come and get a cup of coffee, or, eat one of the bagels that's been manufactured in this town from scratch for 27 years. My rents went up through the roof at the county because the county raised things. They're not doing anything to help the businesses. If you look at the county website for the ads that were placed, there is not one that says, come to Moab. And, you're in charge of that too. They're affecting your incomes. And you're facing a dilemma this year with property taxes, considering that. I urge you to work as a team in true Utah spirit, working hand in hand with Grand County, and talk to them and ask them why they're not helping your cause out as far as your revenue source. Because I think it's remarkable that a city in 1992 took away property taxes and supplemented those taxes with a whole brand new economy. And to this day, it survived. And we have plenty of rooms in the hotels that were approved by these bodies before your time. Let's preserve and protect what we have in a county that has 95% public lands. with Thompson and Castle Valley. Ask Grand County what they're doing to take care of Moab City, the true crown jewel of this county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Howard. Good job keeping it
Got
to
it in
3
there.
minutes. Yeah, impressed. Okay, anybody else that have public comments to make? All right, we'll move on to presentation. Sarah, you're up to talk to us about Moab Solutions. For council, just also so you're aware, we do provide financial support to Moab Solutions for all the work that Sarah does with the homeless in our community and the work she does with the Moab Police Department. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And I think Sarah's going to share with you some of the work that funding has gone towards.
Yeah, I was just gonna do a little overview of things and state, I've been coming before different iterations of this body since 2002, so it's very interesting. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Mayor. So we formed as a volunteer group in 2004, and our main goal was to actively promote reducing and reusing over recycling, recycling over landfilling, removing trash and recycling from streams, stream banks, trails, highways, and byways. And we did massive cleanups of trashed areas. It took 30+ hours. Based on that, we asked the city to partner with us to create Friends of the Parkway, inspired by Friends of the Wissahickon in Philadelphia. And in 2004, they agreed, and it's mainly just to support our efforts with goodwill. So we wanted to get all 5+ miles and the spurs of the parkway adopted so people could take the trash and recycling off. And if they saw anything weird, like, you know, find a steel door in the creek, fires here and there, homeless camps, 6 mattresses in the creek. These are a few of the things we found to let us know. So hundreds of thousands of pounds of trash and recycling have been removed through us and volunteers, probably since we started. And the parkway, thousands of pounds. But we also do minor trail maintenance, cutting things back. I used to go to trail mix meetings for 6 or 7 or 8 years under Sandy Freedy, and we worked together a lot even today. And we made a trail down from Anonymous Park once the bikes were really active so that hikers could walk down without interfering with the bikes, because that was becoming a problem. While we were walking around collecting trash, in one area we would get a 40-gallon bag of mostly alcohol containers. We discovered many, many, many homeless camps. This is in 2008. I spoke to Chief Navarre, got his permission to try a project of a weekly meetup where I'd hire the homeless to clean up and learn how to sort recycling into the back of my truck. He agreed, and we began doing that street level outreach, and the project spread out to the whole community. I had so many people coming up to me, high level members of society, saying, my brother's homeless on the streets of whatever city, or my sister's homeless, or everyone, a lot of people are affected by it. So we even brought homeless to city and county meetings so they could introduce themselves. So because they're kind of invisible to most people, especially then and highly vulnerable. So we started doing that, and it was very helpful. The newspapers, TI was the only paper here. They did dozens of stories over the years about different aspects of the homeless situation. Churches reached out, wanted to do weekly meals, and it just created a very nurturing environment that supported people's desire to make a change. And a lot of people did. We started sending 23 people to rehab, but at that time, there was a very desolate landscape here regarding any help for people with substance use disorder. So we found a rehab and we started sending people there. Now it's a whole different scenario here at the recovery center and other things of that nature. So we still patrol the parkway. We look for homeless camps. We do cleanups. We try to help people move forward. I now have a 20-hour-a-week homeless outreach, a street level outreach person, Wynn Bloodford. He's excellent. He's informed by his own homelessness when he lived in Florida. So he really relates to what people are going through, and he knows how to reach them. So we're still working very hard to find any and all camps quickly before tent cities arise and there's violence and crime and different things. Because we want to help these people move forward if possible. Some people you can't help, but we don't want them hanging around beating each other up either. So because we're out there patrolling all the time, we're aware of problems before they become intractable, which is really good. I'm almost done. Helping the homeless led us to raise money in the community because the weather was so cold. One year it never went above freezing for a month, and we were so worried someone was going to die because about every other year someone did die of exposure. So we started raising money just to put people up, and then we took over the Salvation Army Extension Unit, which I did for 6 years. The paperwork got way too burdensome, so I transitioned back to doing it through us. And so this is where your help, I will explain to you, comes in really handy. So I got a grant, and half of it I put in for admin because of the escalating cost of insurance and QuickBooks, and it's just so much. And the other part went to helping people in need, and I've spent all of that portion. But some of the things were a grandmother caring for 4 grandkids who couldn't pay her rent 1 month. Another was 2 nights lodging for a visitor whose car was totaled in a crash while they were here. Another 4 nights for a man who lost his entire trailer out by the airport in September as 2 dogs perished in the fire. We helped him a lot, and he's doing really well now. Rent assist for a family with 4 kids moving in a new place. Space rent for a family who lost their entire trailer to a fire in Grand Oasis. Lodging for residents of an apartment building that a car crashed into, so the people in certain apartments couldn't stay in there anymore. It was unsafe. A stranded hitchhiker, probably my age, in the cold, we put her up for a night. A dad with 3 kids who was going to get evicted, trying to work full-time at McDonald's and take care of his kids with all the school and all of that. So a single mom with 2 kids, a homeless man with some lodging. And some of our assists are no money assists, like the jail called us. We have someone who's getting out, but when she came in, she was totally naked. So can you bring clothes down to the jail? So we did. We found out. We did careful research to find out her size and got clothes and took them down to the jail. So just for laughs, in 2020, we spent $64,838 on assists. That was COVID year, and a lot of people gave us a lot of money to try to help the people in the shadows who wouldn't qualify for any government assistance. So I worked with churches, motel managers, AP&P, Sea Haven, Multicultural, to identify people that were not going to be able to survive without a cash, because we never give cash, but these people wanted. So they gave the money to me and we gave it to the community. 2021, 37,000, 2022, 34,000. Last year, over 43,000. And it's really helpful that these people can get what they need pretty quickly, and it's all verified. We verify all the assists. So we've been on call 24/7 since 2012. Most of our middle of the night calls come from law enforcement who get into very funny situations all the time. But we work often with the MPD and the Grand County Sheriff's Office, sometimes Highway Patrol, Park Service, and BLM. And we work with the entire family of nonprofits trying to help people get what they need to stay housed, get into treatment, or have a better outcome in their life. We've also been working in Mill Creek Canyon at the power dam since '03 before Solutions, and we became a funded BLM partner in 2014. I'm in there almost every day since 2003, and a daily presence has helped keep it in good shape. We're a community service site, and we work with the courts, attorneys, and others. And everything we do is inspired by and in memory of David Morgan, my partner who passed away over 10 years ago. And he showed me the beauty that you receive from cleaning up the earth when he took me along the banks of the Animas River in Durango in 1994. And I have not stopped since that time. Thank you. I hope I didn't go on too long.
Oh, you were fine. Any questions for Sarah on the work that she does for our community?
No questions, just a thank you and an acknowledgement, like having worked with you while I was at Sea Haven, and with a lot of the relationships that I have in the nonprofit community. Moab Solutions is very frequently kind of the option of last resort for a lot of community members or residents that are stranded here. You are kind of the glue that makes sure that people don't fall through the cracks in this community. So I just wanted to thank you for all the work.
Thank you very much. We say giving up is not an option. So someone's. Thank you guys so much for the financial support and for your input.
Yep, thank you, Sarah. All right, next we move on to department updates and agenda item 5.1. We have Richard and Michael to discuss the transit for 2024. So we're going to share with you the plans for the MAT, which is going to start ramping up here in about a month.
Hello. It's
Hi.
nice to see y'all in 2024. Some new faces, some old. Let's see. No, some
You just called us old.
some tenured members.
Yeah,
So,
right.
no, so sorry. No, I would never.
Good start.
All right. 1 second. Where am I? I shouldn't be showing that. All right. So in 1 month, we have the peak season, 2024 starting. And so I just figured I'd kind of update you guys. We have two new faces on the team. So I figured I'd just rehash the presentation I made last September. And so today we'll be talking about kind of where this funding came from, where the program came from, some of the budget, and then we'll go on to some data from the current non-peak season, partial data onto the full peak season 2023 data, and what that can tell us about peak season 2024 and potential service alterations. And then, so we'll start with some key definitions. Peak season is contracted to be March 16th to October 15th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 2 microtransit and 1 fixed route. Non-peak season, which is what we are in now, is October 16th to March 15th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It doesn't say it, but Monday through Friday, 2 microtransit, no fixed route. On demand is a service that you can get door to door, picks you up wherever you want it to do if you're in the service area. You can either use the app, Motivator Transit, or you can call in 833 MAP free 628-3733. Then there's also the fixed route, which has 19 stops along Main Street. Goes in a fixed loop going from USU to the south, all the way up to the hotels to the north. And you can just jump on and off whenever. So let's go on to some brief history. So in 2018, UDOT gave us some money for Hotspot. A lot of projects were discussed in 2021, dispersed parking, which y'all are seeing the construction of now, and transit were the outcome. 5 years of funding for MAT was in the bag, and we found some more. Fair and Peers went ahead and did a transit study to kind of define what the parameters could be, who could benefit, and that's where we came up with our current service. Put out requests for proposals and bid in 2022, and we awarded Downtowner as a turnkey operator. That means this is not, the vehicles and employees are not the cities. We are using a contractor. And that service began last year. You can go to moabcity.org/map for the service area and some more just details on what the service hours are and whatnot. So let's go on to some budget. The total for the 5 years, it's actually really 63 months, $3.7 million, 1.5 from UDOT Hotspot, and they give us money each year over 5 years, with the amount of money reducing over time. So in the first year, it was 500,000. We are now in the second year, 400,000. goes on down, and then the city county local match increases over time. And that's where it was originally, and with the Fair and Peers study, I believe this is the funding that they had in mind. And then FTA ARPA is COVID relief money. They gave it to FTA some money, and then UDOT Rural Transit earmarked some for us, and that allowed us to actually put in the fixed route. Originally, it was just gonna be the microtransit for the first year, then you bring in the fixed route later. The FTA ARPA allowed us to bring in the fixed route from the beginning. And then as we go forward, FTA 5311, which is rural transit funding, is hopefully what we will be able to find our sustainable funding going forward throughout the hopefully decades. So an analysis of ridership, this non-peak season. So again, it began mid-October, and right now I have data till the end of January. So this does not include February data. We've had, and again, it's only microtransit. We've had 6,361 passengers out of 5,077 requests, which is an average of 1.25 passengers per request. You'll see that's less per request than in the peak season. We averaged 10.6 riders per service hour. This is, as you will see in a bit, a 25% decrease of riders per service hour from the peak season, and 38 total wheelchair rides, which accounts for 0.6% of all rides. I think what's interesting to think about, though, is that our weekly hours that people can use this service for have actually been reduced by 50% pretty much in the non-peak season, but we only saw a 25% decrease in riders per service hour. I think that, and the fact that actually the proportional amount of wheelchair rides is double what it was in the peak season. I think really what this you can correlate this to meaning that we have locals who like the service and use the service, and I've been hearing that a lot. So
Is the microtransit during this time of year one van running?
it's two vans running still. Okay. Yep. So we're going to be talking about peak season 2024 soon. So peak season 2023 is the obvious thing to compare to. In total, last time I gave this presentation, it was in September, and we had up to August, so it was partial data. So this is now new numbers for peak season 2023, which again was mid-March to mid-October. We had about 40,000 total passengers, 15.55 passengers per service hour. So again, a little bit more than what that non-peak season riders per service hour was. Microtransit serviced 92% of them, 36,650. And with 23,609 requests fulfilled, that averaged 1.55 passengers per request, which again is more than what was in the non-peak season, where it's 1.25 passengers per request. Again, if we're going to make assumptions, maybe that means that visitors are more than one person and they tend to ride together, just making assumptions. 14.27 passengers per service hour. And again, wheelchair rides is actually 0.3% of all passengers. So with the 0.6% non-peak season, it's actually doubled in the off season. Fixed route service 3,000, a little over 3,000 passengers, and was about 1.27 passengers per service hour. So these are each of the months total ridership. In blue, we have microtransit, and I think it's red. I'm colorblind. It might be orange. We have fixed route. September was the biggest for fixed route, and June and July were the highest house-wise. I would say that April was probably low because people were still getting used to it. March and October, let's remember, those were only, March was brand new service and it was only half of the month. October was only half of the month as well. So that's why those are reduced. And then peak passengers per hour, we see that at 9 a.m. there's a big jump, and then around 2 to 6 p.m. it starts picking up again. The reason I had it in hours, I actually think 30-minute increments is more telling. The reason I had it in hours is because the fixed route, they provided data based on the hour. They didn't do 30-minute increments. But if you actually could do it in 30-minute increments, 9 to 9:30 is a huge spike, and then it drops down dramatically at 9:30 to 10, meaning that there's an upfront demand for the service at 9 a.m. So some potential service alterations going forward. So big demand at 9 a.m., dropping off at 9:30. Perhaps we can get an 8 a.m. start in. I think the data supports this. The public has been supporting it, telling our drivers that they would like to start earlier. And so this is something that we will be considering. And it could actually reduce wait times at 9 a.m., of course, because now people can get it earlier. What this would mean, because we're going to be trying to stay within budget, is let's say we bring one microtransit vehicle earlier to 8 a.m. That means we need to move either the fixed route or the other microtransit to like 10 a.m. So we need if we bring one earlier, another one has to go later. We're actually thinking that perhaps putting both microtransits at 8 a.m. and pushing back the fixed route to 11 a.m. could be the most beneficial. Especially since fixed route really sees its increased ridership later in the day. So that's one service alteration. And then also, as you saw in those numbers, fixed route was 8% of total riders. How can we increase that? Because if we can increase fixed route ridership, it could actually, it's going to take riders away from microtransit and perhaps reduce the wait times. And we saw wait times upwards of 1 hour in the really peak hours during the peak season, around like 4 to 6 p.m. You could see 1 hour wait times in micro. So if fixed route can be better, microtransit can be better. And I guess what you would really see is wait times for microtransit decrease, and that might actually see ridership increasing, and then maybe it cancels out, but we just get more riders in the same wait time. Such potential alterations include removing specific stops to reduce the lead time. The one that makes most sense to myself and the contractor downtowner is to remove USU campus. It is way out of the way. I have this fun chart of all the stops and their ridership. USU campus has had the least riders getting on and off at it. So perhaps getting rid of USU campus could be the best time. And instead of about a 55-minute cycle, we can reduce that maybe to 45 minutes. And it would also be safer because until we get that stoplight in there, which I think is coming,
Working on it.
Yeah. Until we get that left turn, doing that every hour is pretty dangerous. And it can actually, it's one of the reasons why it's a 55-minute cycle is sometimes you have to wait a long time to turn left out of there. So maybe getting rid of USU campus. Then we also don't have a fixed schedule yet. We didn't know from the start how long this route was going to take, and we now have good data after the first peak season. That's about a 55-minute cycle, and maybe we could create a schedule around that. Put these at each of the stops, and currently you can actually see an estimated wait time. It's based on GPS data, so it's kind of hard to judge. An actual fixed schedule could be something that you actually plan around, and then that could make the fixed route more feasible. Would also increase the lead time though. Let's say you have a 45-minute cycle. You don't want to put that schedule at exactly 45 minutes because you're just going to be constantly late, leaving late. You're never going to leave earlier. That's why it's called a stop departure schedule. I don't know, it's a made up name I made, but basically the idea of the schedule is you never leave before this time. You can leave later, but you never leave before. Then another potential alteration is how do we really force people to actually use the fixed route? And there's this idea of if you have this fixed route zone and your trip A and trip B are both within that zone, then you have to take the fixed route. Except for wheelchairs, they're all known. From the beginning, we weren't comfortable putting wheelchairs into the fixed route. There's a lot of tight spaces on Main Street, and loading someone out the back. These are back-loaded wheelchairs. They're not on the side. So fixed route, we don't really want to be putting wheelchairs on it. So if we had this fixed route zone where we were forced to use the fixed route, it would not be that way for wheelchairs. They could still use the microtransit no matter what. So this is kind of an example of what that could look like. Let's say that your A and B are both within one of those blobs, then you have to take fixed route. Now, it would take a lot of work, and this right here would be extremely controversial. This is a very rough drawn map, and there could be residents who are in that gray blob and they want to go to City Market and they might be forced to use a fixed route. We don't want to do that. That's probably not a good idea. We're still figuring out how this could work, and it would, even if we implemented it, it would be a lot of tweaking as we go on. But perhaps one thing that we could do is maybe take the hotels to the north, that the first blob and also that second blob. Perhaps we make those fixed route only, make the hotels fixed route only. Now, so the Hyatt Place, if you look at this, is again fixed route usage. These numbers are on and off, so it's actually double the amount of actual fixed route riders. So Hyatt Place had the most. Spoke had the second, so we're having people coming into downtown. Could be named better, but the Spoke is the easiest way to identify exactly where it is. The Element was next up, and then the MIC in downtown. We also have the Transit Hub North, and Fairfield Inn is that northern terminus. So perhaps maybe if the Hyatt, Fairfield, and the Element, maybe we make them fixed route only, find a way to make them happy with it. They do currently have their own stops at their locations. So perhaps that's a way to do it, make fixed route more feasible. And if you do that, let's say we take out that north blob, that also reduces how far microtransit would have to drive. So it could increase microtransit, feasibility. All right. Peak season begins March 16th. As contracted, it's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Perhaps we can move that earlier. All week, every day. So we're adding back on weekends. Microtransit and fixed route, and it concludes October 15th. Yeah, and that's it.
Questions
Any
for
questions?
Richard?
Yeah, a couple of comments. One, I can see the eliminating the north end, some of those hotels from the microtransit. I mean, if we're talking about what's becoming upwards of an hour wait at peak times, and the circuit for the fixed route is under that, you know, it seems like that could be very accommodating still to those hotels. Two, how are the bus stops for the fixed routes designated downtown? How are they signed? And
So if you just right down the street, we have the Moab Information Center on the side of the road. There is it's a small sign. It's kind of hard to see. It is colorful, but it is small.
so
but we do have
that's
19
a big
of
starting
those.
point too. And I
Making-
know that as this was experimental, you know,
So,
probably didn't want to invest.
The problem with making them bigger, which I think you're about to get to,
Yes, please.
is that you would have to make them also taller. There was a reason why we did them, because they're small. I think Mark maybe back this up. It's a head clearance thing.
Okay.
So it's also a balance of there's a QR code on it. So we also want people to be able to read the information on it, maybe snap
Sure,
a picture
sure.
and get the QR code. But the reason we went small is
It could be eye level,
Yeah.
eye level.
more METCD type stuff, I think, or whatever. But
I understand. Yeah, it does seem like maybe that's a hindrance to more people getting on that. I mean,
For sure.
that I haven't noticed.
it's a good idea. Maybe there's a way to do that. Maybe flags on top or something.
Yeah, something just to draw attention to people. And then bike racks, please.
Yeah, so problem with bike racks as it currently stands is fixed route again. We're very hesitant. Chuck Williams was very safety focused, as he should be as city engineer, and just unloading and loading people on Main Street, where a lot of these stops are, 2 feet from traffic. We're concerned about putting them on fixed route. Problem with, we'll be looking into it, and then with microtransit, as it currently stands, the wheelchairs are in the back, and the contractor had concerns about putting the bikes in the front. And it's something that we can discuss with them and maybe do that. Now, let's say we don't add bikes to the fixed route. We only add them to the microtransit. And then now we're making microtransit ever more demanding,
Mhm.
and we want our wheelchairs to be. We never want to make people in wheelchairs have to wait an insane amount of time. Like we want to be ADA accessible, so we want them to have a fast response time. So we're working on it, on how to get the bike racks, but that's at least the reasoning that we have for the first peak season.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Comments, questions for?
Yeah, I really like the idea of the fixed route potentially like getting on a schedule. I think that would really open up the usage of it.
Yeah.
Because like you were talking about, people would actually be able to plan around it, whereas right now they might be able to see that sign, but it might be coming in a minute, it might be coming in an hour. Like it's really kind of like hard to plan around that.
You can't see it on the GPS, but
Yeah.
if you don't have a phone, you
Yeah.
have to call in and then ask people
How
on the
far away
dispatch,
are you guys?
And it's us. Yeah, I know. The schedule would be great.
And potentially like long-term sustainability if there are, and I think particularly like if we focus on servicing a lot of like the hotels with a fixed route and everything, having that scheduled kind of stop, I think would go a long way in terms of having more tourists use it.
Yeah.
I think the data, particularly with the microtransit, really kind of speaks to just how many locals use that to get to and from work and kind of run daily errands and make medical appointments. I know at the hospital, I see the Moab Transit vans like all day, every day.
Yeah.
So really kind of helping our residents meet their basic needs. And so, yeah, if we can kind of separate out those two populations a little bit to make microtransit a little bit more available to our local residents, while also kind of helping the hotels provide like a good service to their customers, and maybe eventually we can ask them to start shipping money into running like that fixed portion, and ideally we'll reduce vehicular traffic through all of that. But I'm really impressed with what's been put together so far and like the data that you're all able to collect, and yeah, just really excited to hear about the positive feedback and really excited that it seems to be used so much by our locals.
Yeah. Seeing Downtowners Parades, they've done a fantastic job. Yeah. I should probably get them in sometime so you guys can meet the Downtowner folks.
You know, I would really hope that you guys would look at the 8:30 route. I think that would make a big difference, you know. People who have that 9 o'clock work time or whatnot and stuff, and people from working. So
yeah,
I think it'd be a real benefit.
I mean, even I could start using it because we start at 8 a.m. here. Maybe I get a little bit late, you know, maybe 10 minutes late, but I can use the microtransit, you know?
Yeah, no, and I think, I mean, I actually had an employee who had a 9 o'clock work time. She wrecked her car and she's like, can't take the microtransit because I always have to wait like 30 minutes. And, you know, and that was just kind of, well, you know, and we worked with her, you know. But I think there's a lot of people who have that. So, how many people do call in versus the app? Did you guys?
Oh, actually, let me.
Is there quite a few people who don't?
Let me pull. I actually have some data on what's that. It's gonna take me a slight second to pull.
And I would assume that the app would be like people want to do the microtransit, and that the app would just say, no, you can't use this. Use the fixed route. Is that kind of the thought?
So there's
go into the app and say, I want to go from here to here. They say not available. Use the fixed route.
Yep, it'd be a geofence like it currently is now, where there's a defined service area based on GPS, and if you're outside of that, you're gonna have to go into the service area to be able to get a pickup.
I guess kind of question with that, like having the separated geographic areas, like what would it look like if we do have a local who's wanting to come into work that's in like the center, like works at the Spoke? Would they have to like take and they're live further south in the valley? Would they take like micro transit all the way to the beginning of that geographic zone and then have to take the fixed route in and then kind of do the same on the reverse out? Or
would that employee be like living at the hotels? The idea is just for maybe the hotels to the north
so they could
cancel out.
So if they were outside that thing, they could take it to the Spoke.
Yeah, it's if you're A and B. So like, let's say we have a geo fence around the hotel, and then we have a zone along downtown Moab. if your A and B are within
Okay.
these defined zones, then it's. Maybe we don't even do that. Maybe we just put a circle around the hotels and then it's just like you're outside of the service area. Then it's only fixed route. Okay, so on some data, we got 22,000, so let's see, out of 28,833 requests. I think this is all of them. We've had 22,777 app. So that's equal to. Just your sum.
Yeah.
All right, so that's 79%. And then 5,193 through the phone. 715, it's listed on My Data as driver app. These are people that are kind of like waving down the service and getting a ride without actually making an order. They get on the vehicle, the driver makes the order. So 715 of those. But yeah. So most apps. So there's a lot of that being used.
But it is being used. People are calling in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And they call me a lot of the times, looking for a ride because my phone number is also on the website page. So they see.
So you go and pick them up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, so I don't know. I don't know if this is the place to bring this up, but I actually had experience the other night, and this is something that I want to also work on. Is we ended the service at 5 p.m. on the non-peak season. This lady took the service to the hospital, and she stayed later than 5 p.m. and she didn't have a ride back. She called me, and I did actually give her a ride. But that we shouldn't be setting that as a precedent. So I don't know how we can.
You're in big trouble now. I think.
I know, yeah. That's I shouldn't have said it. But I will be denying too many people going forward. But
This is the first time hearing of it.
anyways,
Sounds like it was outside of business hours.
Well, Richard.
yes, I
thank
was
you.
I was a public citizen at that point in time. I was in my own.
Did you
personal
get a tip?
vehicle.
Did you get a tip?
Oh no tip.
Uber driver
That's
too.
it.
You missed out on opportunity.
Richard, thank you so much for everything you're doing on the transit program. It's awesome. It's such a great asset to our community. I hope you guys are going to do a lot more advertising on the fixed route and working closer with the hotels. I think that, it was our first year, let's see I bet you the numbers are going to be a lot bigger next year.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Really exciting, Richard. No.
All right, Lexi. Agenda item 5.2, Dark Sky Community Progress Update.
All right. Today, Mel and I are gonna give an update on where we are in our application process.
So Lexi, would
Yes.
you mind introducing Mel? I don't know that everybody's met.
Hi. Working with the city for about 6 months. Mel has been with us. She is a sustainability Vista, and she's been working on dark skies and a lot of landscaping outreach and been a huge help. And she is part of her work on dark skies will be in the latter part of this presentation.
And just so you know, Richard started out as the Vista for the sustainability.
All right.
So, yeah, potential.
Okay, let's see. Okay, these are the main components of a dark sky community application. So this is something the city, people for me, we've been working on it for a while. And we have knocked some big things out, some pieces of the application. We updated the city code in December, and we're going to talk about the rest of the application. And we expect to be submitting something maybe as soon as March. So with city compliance, we have to, now that we have our city code, become compliant ourselves. And that involves streetlights, and it involves the lights on city buildings. And within the category of streetlights, we have Cobra heads, which are primarily owned by Rocky Mountain Power. And we also have the decorative fixtures, which are mostly found on Main Street. The Rocky Mountain Power process is going to be separate because we have to negotiate that with them. So tonight, the main update is going to be on the decorative ones because we have a test area pending. The retrofit is going to involve 15 luminaires, which are the actual lights. And the way our posts are set up, they have 2 lights per pole, so it's 8 fixtures. And that's going to exclude 1 bedside light because we have 15. That's why you're not like, it was not 16. I don't have a photo of one of our fixtures with the retrofit yet because they haven't been installed. So this is not supposed to represent some sort of new shield on our fixtures. It's just an example of how one fits up into a fixture like ours. This is not something that will change the exterior of the fixture other than the part of the light that drops below the shield. And that's the part that's not compliant. So the interior of those shields will come out and then this will go up inside and it'll be flush up in there. So they're dark sky compliant. Oh, I will also mention the color on these. They will both be in the range of colors that are acceptable to dark skies. 3000K will be on the north 4 fixtures, and then 2400K or will be on the south side of the street. The way the colors for these work, and I'll give you an example later, is that the 3000K are going to be a little bluer and the 24K will be a little warmer, but all of them would be compliant. It's a matter of preference for us. And we worked with UDOT on that, and that's why we didn't go lower than 2400. This was as low as they wanted to go. This is the location for these to go in. We expect to see, them facing. So the 3000K will be facing, the whole road will be representative of that color, and likewise on the 2400K. As a comparison of what we would see, the left side of this is actual measurements from a fixture on Main Street in this area. And then the right side is an example fixture, which would be 2200K, but in this particular case, we would be moving at 24. We expect the color temperatures to be warmer than what we have currently. We expect the shift of the spectrum to reduce blue light, so it'll be warmer colored, and this has associated health benefits to avoiding blue light in like late night hours for people, for plants, for animals. The color rendering will be slightly poorer on the new fixtures, but still adequate to be able to tell the difference between colors. So that's something to look for when you see them. And they will be brighter, probably a lot brighter. When we had the measurements taken, we found out that the current fixtures are dimmer than would be typically recommended on a road, like our highway with pedestrians on it. So the new fixtures, although they will be facing down and eliminating uplight, they will probably be visibly brighter than what we have currently, which should help with safety. This is an example of not specifically 3000 to 2400K, but the kind of difference you can see in the color of lighting on a road. So when they're installed, it's a comparison point to see which of these is more pleasing for our streets. And we're doing 1 block, but we have more blocks all the way down Main Street where we can choose the color that works for us. That will be going in on February 20th. That's when they'll be installed, and then we'll be inviting people to give us feedback. And I'm going to kind of go through a few other things in this, and then we'll sum up all the dates at the end. One of the other components of this coming into compliance for the city is our properties. So this is just one example. We've been doing walkthroughs with Public Works, identifying fixtures that are not compliant and replacing them with fixtures that are. So we're going to continue to do that until we've gotten through all of the city properties. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mel to talk about light pollution management and education.
Thank you. All right, so light pollution management, you can see here we have photos of Orchard Villas, which as you know, large condominium complex. They've completed a retrofit project to dark sky approved outdoor fixtures that you can see here. So we've checked off residential support, and we are in the process of working on business. So that will be checked off soon. Next part is the community outreach and incentives. So featured here, you see the outdoor lighting retrofit assistance program, which is facilitated by the Friends of Arches and Canyonlands. And just a little background for those that aren't familiar, eligible participants can receive up to $200 rebate for participating in this retrofit program. And their website is a great resource if you want to learn more about that. And then next we have the measurement program. And so we have some volunteers within the community that go out and using a dark sky meter app on their phone, they record the darkness of the sky. And so the chart that you see here is the data, and the data represented here begins in September 2020. And that says October, but we're still continuing to gather data, I think this last new moon. So we just have to enter in that data, and that will continue to grow on our chart. And at the bottom for reference is the sky quality meter scale. And so pretty much the higher the number, the darker the sky. And as you can see, our trend is going up, which is good. And so we've checked off that as well. And then moving along to education, there are many, there have been several events in which dark sky education and information about the retrofit program has been available to the community. And we've just included 2 examples here, such as the Astrofest last summer. And then that's on the left. And then on the right, you can see a clip of one of the brochures distributed by Friends of Arches and Canyonlands, which goes into some basic but helpful information as well as visuals. And so since those are out there to the public, we can check those off as well. So.
All right, so all of these things are going to go together into our application. One of the requirements is that we have a feasible plan for how we're going to become compliant ourselves as a city. And our current step in that process is testing out the decorative fixture retrofits on the block from 200 South to 300 South. They'll be installed February 20th. I will be inviting feedback from anybody who wants to give it to us from February 20th to March 20th, especially with the attention to the colors of the light, whether the 2400 is better or the 3000. The color rendering. So if you have a shirt or objects with you, you might want to look and see what that looks like. The rest of the street will be remained unchanged. So that would be also a comparison to our existing lights. The brightness, and in particular with reference to safety, visibility on the sidewalk in the street, and also glare, whether it's difficult to drive through that road. They can send feedback to the sustainability@moabcity.org or call the website, call the phone number for the city, which is all available, available on the website. From there, what we plan to do is we're pulling all of this into our application. We have most of it together already. We're going to submit in March to the Dark Skies, which used to be known as International Dark Sky Association. And from there, there's a process that's kind of a back and forth about our application. And we plan to go through that process. We're not sure how long it will take, but that is the first step in becoming a dark sky community. And with that, we'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions, comments?
Is there an end to the retrofit reimbursement program? When is that? Or how is that? Is there a financial end?
I think the end of that is basically it was grant funded. So I think when the grant's been expended, that's the end of the program. but it is being run through the funds.
Right, and they budget every year for this, so,
great. Okay.
yeah, I'm sure that they'll at least have a couple $1,000s a year to help support, unless for some reason they don't, but I know this is a big part of their work.
Sorry, and I missed it. Can you say again who is providing those rebates?
It's a friend of Arches and Canyonlands Parks.
Okay. And you just access that through their website.
It's
Mhm.
actually on the city and the county's website.
We do also link to them, and they have
Cool.
online form on the Moab Dark Skies site that they operate.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're on their website today. We were on their website today, so we know that it's still up to date and still in operation, so.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? I'm really excited to see the Orchard Villa. I worked with somebody's father very closely about a year or so ago, and so that was one of the things we suggested is you guys can be a good example for the rest of the community. So happy to see that. So thank you guys for everything you do.
Great, thank you.
All right, we're almost done with our general business. We've got one action item this evening. It's our consent agenda. We have 3 items. A ratification of a work change directive 2 for Silver Spur construction for the Tusher area sewer improvement project. This is an overreach of about 100,000. If you remember at our strategic plan, Obi brought up how the sewer and the water lines were too close together. And we wanted to get that changed. And so we went ahead and approved the contract. Normally that would come to you first. So that's a change order that we just felt was important to move forward. So this is a ratification of that. We have the approval of the minutes from January 23, 2024, and the approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $650,597.79. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda? I'll ask for a motion. This is going to be roll call because the ratification is an expenditure of funds.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Jason.
I'll
Second by Tawny. Discussion?
No.
Tawny? Anybody else? Roll call vote. Jason?
Yes.
Tawny?
Yes.
Luke?
Aye.
Colin?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, that's the end of our general business. Tough, pretty tough. Don't get used to this, though. So we're gonna move now to city manager updates, and then we'll hear from council members and myself, and we'll go into closed session tonight.
All right, great. A quick update from me. A couple of things on the RAPTAC front. The RAP grant is open. Applications are due March 1st. Then the committee will meet and produce their recommendations to you, the city council, and you guys finalize the last selection of applicants for the RAPTAC grant. Another reminder, we have a vacant position on that committee. So the RAPTAC committee position is open. The applications are due February 18th. There's more info on the city website about eligibility for that position. If you know anyone, please point them in our direction. It's a fun committee. They do really good work for the community. A reminder that trash and recycling open enrollment runs from February 1st to the 29th. So if you want to reduce your service for trash or recycling, now is the time to do it. You can do so by calling the treasurer's office at 435-259-5123 or visit moabcity.org/open. You've noticed that we're underway with dispersed parking, finally commencing the construction, and King Creek is kind of coming up imminently. That contractor is just sort of setting the stage for changes to that street. I want to note too that we've done a lot of substantial cleanup on the Mill Creek for the chip seal project. Especially, we're trying to concentrate the street sweeper between roughly like Murphy Lane and the Hecla subdivision or LaSalle, because we know that there isn't an alternative route through town. So we've been kind of really focusing on that part. So hopefully people who are commuting by bike from Spanish Valley will be able to use that and safely enter the Mill Creek Parkway. And everywhere else through town should have some alternative like the parkway or sidewalks or side streets. So we're just trying to be more strategic when it comes to that cleanup. If people have questions, that's what we're trying to do. And that's all I have for city manager update.
Great. Thanks, Carly. Council reports, we'll start with you, Caitlin.
Okay, on February 5th, I attended a Community Renewable Energy Agency Board meeting. They're still working on assembling guidelines and rules for solicitation and for the program application. They're hoping to have those ready to distribute to the community so they can start being reviewed by various attorneys. And hopefully those will be put together and approved by the board in March. Well, I guess approved by the committees in March. And then most likely they will be, Salt Lake City started and they're asking other communities involved with the program to support and submit letters of intent for an EPA climate pollution reduction grant. This grant will cover almost half of the program costs. Seems like it'll be a stopgap to ensure that there's not going to be any funding fallout for the program. On February 7th, I attended with Michael and some people from the county a meeting about base camp conference happening here in October, hosted by the NAR initiative. It'll be half on outdoor recreation, half on community development in NAR communities. So they're just starting to get conference materials together, but I think it's very exciting that Mo's been selected to host. On the 8th, I attended a housing task force meeting. The task force is working on establishing various committees, two of which are pretty exciting. One is creating a housing dashboard and a housing survey that will be distributed to residents and businesses, trying to get better local housing data more regularly. And we will also be focusing on and creating a committee related to deed restriction programs, figuring out what that looks like in the Moab area. Colin and I did an infrastructure tour with Obi and Levi last Friday. That was pretty fun, very exciting. Touring around Public Works and all of our various infrastructure. That's it for me.
Thanks, Caitlin. Colin.
All right, on the 24th of January, I attended my first RAP Tax Advisory Committee, and we spent that time updating and improving the application, which is now live, as Carly said, closing down in March 1st, and then yep, and then there's the one seat still available until I believe the 18th of February, so we said, yep. And then on the 25th, we attended the dispersed parking open house, which I think was well attended. It sounds like about 30 people. Great information, again, great way to move into this new era of public outreach and engagement. On the 8th of February was the Cane Creek open house. And again, I was only there for the very beginning of it, but it was very well attended and again, great information and a really exciting project. It's going to be a beautiful completed project. On the 9th, the three of us drove the bus around on the infrastructure tour. So it'll be the bus driver. Then on the 13th yesterday was the Trail Mix meeting, or no, this morning was Trail Mix meeting. And so at Trail Mix, we have a couple big maintenance events coming up. One, our Spring Spruce Up, which was formerly known as the Moab Facelift, which is on the 13th of April. And there's going to be a lot more information about that. And that'll consist of probably 5 to 8 projects, many of which will be within the city, hopefully along the parkway. And had a lot of success with that last year. Did a lot of great work. And then our maintenance Mondays, first Monday of every month, we have a maintenance on a different hiking or biking or any sort of parkway active transportation resource, and so stay tuned for those. And then there was one more thing. Oh yeah, the breaking ground on the Mud Springs Trail System, which is a partnership with San Juan County. It's at the south end of the valley, has been postponed until the fall. So I know people in this community are excited about that. They're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Tawny.
I don't have an awful lot. I attended the dispersed parking workshop or meet the contractors. And it was well attended, and I think the staff did a really good job of putting that on and answering people's questions. And on the 8th, I attended a Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. And basically, that was mostly just business. We discussed our director's review, and that was about it.
Thanks, Tony. Luke.
Say not a ton to report on. I attended the Meet the Contractors event as well. Good turnout. I had some really productive conversations with some of the local residents, one of which carried over into City Market, where I ran into somebody there. Yeah, just really excited about the project. Overall positive feedback. Some people have like individual concerns about like different aspects of it. Yeah, just really looking forward to getting moving on that. And then I also attended the most recent Planning Commission meeting where a significant portion of it was devoted to kind of employing our new landscape code for the first time on our city property.
Great.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I was thinking about it like this was in a way like kind of because it required certain exceptions to be made and everything like that. And so we got to really work through like the entire process in-house before it went live. And I think there's some like really good feedback from the Planning Commission about when exceptions are made, are there alternatives that can be like kind of made available to the individuals that still help? Like one of the things was providing kind of more shade trees and also re-looking at some of the trees on our list that aren't really trees, particularly shade trees. But yeah, really productive conversation. I'm really excited that the water reclamation facility is finally going to be getting that structure in place so that we can actually look after a really expensive like vacuum trucks and everything like that. But yeah, other than that, I think that was really it. Yeah, like I've LHC'd tomorrow, and then this month's WISA meeting got canceled. So
Thank you. Jason.
So I attended the dispersed parking open house. I attended the King Creek parking open house. Really good. And then today I attended the Moab Chamber of Commerce retreat, which is at Spring Hill. That was really good. The Chamber is putting on a bunch of trainings for people, for employees in town. They got a grant from the county. And so they have some great speakers and some great trainings coming up this month. It's worth checking out on their website if you have employees and even yourself want to go do that. They got some great stuff coming up in the future, planning calendar or fundraisers and that. And then this afternoon, I attended the Travel Council meeting, and they discussed kind of trends that they're kind of seeing. Some trends are noticeable that ski resorts in Colorado and Utah, they're saying they're down about 16% this year. So they're hoping that that doesn't carry over to the summer, you know, that it's just because we've had kind of a bad snow year at some of the resorts or whatnot. Horizon, the filming of the Horizon is coming out this June and August. And then they did a sales trip to Paris, and they said that the French are really excited about Moab. And you can catch a flight from Paris to Phoenix, and then now you can catch a flight from Phoenix to Moab. So you could be in France. Two flights.
And we need to go visit the president.
Yeah, exactly. They did mention the president, the president of Southern France, who came and visited and was really excited about Grand County and Moab and our sustainable tourism, which you guys were with him, and I guess he was very excited about this area.
His chief of staff specifically invited us to come to Marseille because he could not stand the fact that the only place I'd been in France was Paris.
Well, we're
Now
gonna
you get
take that
close.
flight.
Now you get close to 2 flights. And that was, yeah, but it.
Thanks, Jason. I spend a lot of January out of town, but I did attend my usual admin meetings and via Zoom. Also been participating in the legislative league meetings. A lot going on there. I'm not gonna go in. I have 3 pages. When I meet with you guys individually, I'll tell you the details. A lot of housing bills. Nothing really at this point that we're worried about that's gonna negatively impact the city.
Oh, unless
However,
your neighbor wants to build a mine next door to your
Yeah.
house.
well, there's that. But at this point, we need to be prepared. The last 3 weeks, things are gonna start moving really fast because now March 1st is their last day. So we'll be paying really close attention and we're working with KCR lobbyists if anything comes up that we need to be aware of. Met with Michael and the Chair of the Council on Aging to talk about some MAPS project issues. The Council on Aging is pretty active and they really want to participate in the MAPS project. So we're going to include the chair on that group. Also met with Saxon Sharp and Richard about a grant application that the county, the Moab Tailings Project Steering Committee is submitting, well, hopefully is going to be asked to submit $1.2 million for continued planning and engineering for the UMTR site once it's completed. So formulating a subcommittee to help assist with that grant application if we get asked. We did submit a concept paper, and then once they get that concept paper, depending, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get asked. I can't say 100%, but the DOE said you guys need to apply. So I have a feeling we will get asked to apply, and so we need some technical support. So we're gonna put a subcommittee together that'll include Carly and Michael and some county folks, and then a couple of elected, so we can help assist with that grant application. Boundary Commission meeting, not much except for voting for the chair and the vice chair. I did mention to them that we do have some annexations coming up that could see some protests and that they may need to be involved in that. And then I have another report that we need to discuss in executive session. So I'm going to ask for a motion, and it's a mouthful of executive sessions that we need to discuss today. So Jason, if you wouldn't mind making a motion to go into executive.
I move to convene a closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, and physical or mental health of an individual, pending or reasonable imminent litigation, the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, and the purchase of an exchange or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code 524205.
Second?
Second that. Can you repeat that?
All right. Motion by Jason, seconded by Colin. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0, we go into executive. All right, let us know when we're ready. We've got our attorneys online.